to Penny and the P. My name is Penny Rosen. I'm so excited for this second video, and I got such great feedback on the first one, so thank you so much for all of your views and your comments. We'll start today with our little icebreaker questions. So a product that I'm using right now that I absolutely love, and it was given to me by a friend as a gift, is this amazing body oil. It's called Burt's Bees Mama Bee Nourishing Body Oil. Here's what it looks like. And it's basically for you to rub like anywhere on your body, but mostly on your belly and your hips. And I really like it because Denver is super dry. And so I'm starting to get kind of itchy on my stomach area from the skin stretching, and this stuff really works. And it smells really good, like it has a citrusy scent, so it smells like oranges and lemons. And I love this company because they don't add any chemicals or fragrances to any of their stuff. So it's a really good product. And a pregnancy book that I'm reading that I actually got right at the beginning of my pregnancy is the Healthy Pregnancy book. I only wanted to get one pregnancy book because I feel like you don't really use them. They can be really overwhelming. I mean, you can see how thick this is. And a lot of people told me not to get What to Expect When You're Expecting because it just seemed to put a lot of fear in pregnant women's minds. And I also did a bunch of research, and I guess they don't really have a lot of scientific evidence or research to back up what they say. So that kind of, didn't really sit well with me. So I really like this book because it is written by a husband and wife pair, and the husband is a pediatrician and the wife is a nurse, and they have like 5 kids. And it's just really friendly language. And it also breaks things up by month and by trimester. And it's just kind of a good resource to go back to before I have my prenatal appointments. So definitely would recommend that. And so a pregnancy symptom that I'm feeling this week is really weird food cravings. I cannot stop eating olives. I just literally eat them out of the jar. I sit on the couch and eat them out of the jar. And I always loved olives, but this is like to another level. Like I think I should take up stock in green olives. And a little bit of lower back pain, which I'm trying to get rid of by like walking and stretching and stuff. So 15 weeks so far and feeling a lot better than I was the past couple of weeks. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about a really important topic to me, and that is infertility and PCOS. And it's very personal to me, and I think it's really important to talk about it because you may face this at some point in your life, or you may know somebody who has, faced infertility. It's so common in young women today, older women. It just seems to be really prevalent. And it was just something that unfortunately I had to experience on my journey to becoming pregnant. So a little bit about what I had to deal with. I was diagnosed with PCOS, which basically means Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. And it's an endocrine disorder, which means that your hormone levels are kind of out of whack. And hormones are little messengers that go throughout your body and tell your body what to do. So if they're not at their correct levels, a lot of different systems can be affected. And with PCOS, ovulation is what's affected. So if you see like a healthy ovary, it would have these little follicles in it, and follicles are basically what you get before you have an egg. They mature into an egg. And women with PCOS have like 35 follicles, whereas a normal, healthy woman would have 5 follicles. And the PCOS follicles look kind of like a string of pearls if you see them on an ultrasound. So a lot of women think that PCOS is just a disease of women who are overweight, but actually 50% of women who have a normal BMI suffer from PCOS. And it's kind of a silly name because it really has nothing to do with cysts. It's follicles. Cysts are something completely different, and you can have a cyst on your ovary. I've had a lot of friends who have had ovarian cysts. This is different. It's really not a cyst, it's a follicle, so it's a very confusing name. But basically what it meant was that I was going to have trouble ovulating, which in turn would mean that I would have trouble getting pregnant. So the way I found out and I was diagnosed was I went off birth control, and kind of waited for my period to get regular. And it really was just all over the place, and I would just go 2 months without having a period. And I was really good about calling my OB and letting them know each month kind of what was happening. And I know that I had been tested when I was younger for some endocrine issues. And so my mom and I kind of had this feeling like something is going on. This is not just birth control kind of working its way outside, out of my body. So we, after a lot of phone calls to the OB, she finally decided to get me tested after about 4 months of being off birth control and not having a regular period. And I remember the day I got the phone call that I had PCOS, I was just like, not even sad, just kind of like, okay, I knew it was something. Now we know what it is. What's next? And they immediately referred me over to a reproductive endocrinologist, which is basically a fertility doctor. And like I said, I wasn't sad. I was just kind of, I had been wondering what it was, and I knew that something was wrong. So it wasn't a huge shock. I think the sadness and frustration came in a little bit later because it just happened to be that this was when I decided I wanted to go to nursing school. And I already had decided I was going to take my prerequisites and then do a year-long program that was kind of accelerated, and maybe we would try to have kids after. And this was sort of a quick decision, and then we got the news about the PCOS, and I just felt like, wow, how am I going to do both of these things? And how are we going to wait till I'm like in my early 30s? Is it worth waiting? So we went in for our first appointment, and it's really funny because you feel like your life is over and your world is ending, and you expect the doctors to be like super sensitive, and they were just so matter of fact. And it's even funnier because I guess PCOS, it's really run of the mill at these places, and it's kind of like lower on the spectrum. It's not really that complicated. I mean, they just give you medication, and it's sort of like, an otherwise healthy young woman who's, not even 30 years old yet and has a great health history. They really didn't seem too concerned, and I felt like this was the worst news I'd ever gotten. So that was a huge surprise to me. They were just super matter of fact, and they tried to keep their emotions out of it. And they basically sat me down and told me, here's what you have, and here's how we're going to treat it. And essentially, you have to treat it either way, because either you treat it by trying to get pregnant and kind of dealing with the hormones that way, or you have to treat it even if you're not going to get pregnant, because not having that regular period increases your risk for uterine cancer, and you can become pre-diabetic, and just, the hormones really need to be functioning the way that they're supposed to be. So that made me feel very empowered, because I felt like either way, this is something I needed to do something about, and, it was really good that I knew that I had it and I could go from there. So we did decide to go the pregnancy route because they basically told us that my egg reserve is really great and I had my age on my side, and they couldn't paint a picture for me 3 years from now as to where I would be. And that made us really, really nervous. So we kind of had to figure out, okay, where is, my new plan with nursing gonna go, kind of in relationship to having a baby as well. And we ended up deciding that I was gonna continue my prerequisites and then go for a program that was a little bit longer, 2-year programs, so that I could go back to school when baby was, just under a year old, if it worked out. I mean, we didn't even know when we were gonna get pregnant. That was kind of the plan, but that was a very difficult time for me, and I felt like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I just did not want to choose. I didn't want to choose a dream career, and I didn't want to choose starting a family. So we went into the doctor, and the treatment basically is they start you on medication. I was started on Femara, and it kind of helps you to ovulate. It's just an oral medication. It's a pill, and you kind of have to track your cycles, and you take the pill 5 days in a row, and then you go in for an ultrasound, and they check to see if one of those little follicles that I talked about has gotten bigger. And that's a great sign, because if it's gotten bigger, then that means that it'll eventually mature into an egg, and you will ovulate. So they have it's amazing that they can do this, and it's a drug that really doesn't have that many side effects, And then we also had the option of using a trigger injection, which basically means that once you've taken the oral medication, you can then take a trigger injection and it stimulates ovulation. So you know that you're going to ovulate within 2 days. So the whole process is very kind of streamlined, and it's really easy to follow, and you start like living your life in these 28-day cycles. And the only thing that was really frustrating is that you don't realize that one cycle is not going to be 1 month. So it takes a while for them to figure out what dosage of medication you can respond to, and sometimes it'll work 1 month and then they may have to bump it up the next month. So, I mean, I think it took us almost 10 months to get pregnant, and I think we started like sometime in October, and then we didn't get pregnant till March. So it was a long time, you know, a lot of unknown, and like I said before, I didn't really have that many side effects. I got really tired from the medication, but of course, you know, I was emotional, but I feel like how could you not be emotional when you're living your life in these 28-day cycles? And, you know, when you get that negative pregnancy test, you keep thinking, am I just going to keep getting negatives? And is this really going to happen for me? Or you go in and there's no follicle, and so you're like, okay, we have to go bump up the medication, you know, go back home, start all over again. There's just a lot of little disappointments in this like grand plan. And you take things really personally. Like I remember we got a new pregnancy test. We were at like a different drugstore and we picked up a new pregnancy test, and it doesn't just say not pregnant or, you know, the one line, whatever it is. It just says no in huge cap letters. No. Like, nope, not this time, sorry. And we were just like, that is so mean. Why would you ever do that to a couple? Like, why would you just say no? At least say like, not pregnant. I don't know. It just seemed to be yelling at us. And we were laughing because we just thought, well, of course, you know, we're so sensitive. And I remember they used to count my follicles every single time. And, you know, they'd count up to 35, and I'd be like, we all know there's a lot of follicles. Thank you. This is PCOS. You don't need to sit there and count. You're hurting my feelings. So, you know, it's like a really emotional time, and it's just, you kind of have to go with it. And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this is that I think it's really important that you advocate for yourself, and not just if you have infertility or PCOS or whatever it may be, but in general with your reproductive health, it's really important to speak up. And I learned that the hard way because I actually have a para-ovarian cyst, which is just, it's like a little bubble of water that sits kind of next to my ovary. And we happen to be, our fertility specialist kind of is in a larger practice. And so you can have kind of a different doctor on any given day depending on when your ultrasound is scheduled for. You come in so many times, you can't see the same doctor every single time. It just doesn't work with their schedule or your schedule. So we had a new doctor, and I guess they never wrote in my file that I had this cyst. And so he, you know, we were doing our follicle scan, and we went in, and he said, oh, okay, well, I see a follicle, but, you know, it's a little bigger than I would like, but it's okay, let's go ahead and do the trigger shot, and let's just go for it. And it ended up that he thought that the cyst was a follicle. And, you know, again, people make mistakes. It wasn't written on the chart. He had never seen me before. And so when it came time to test 2 weeks later, I didn't have a period, but I wasn't pregnant. And I kept getting negative pregnancy tests, and I was like in limbo. And we went in, and the doctor was like, okay, well, this was my doctor this time. I'm really sorry, but I think we made a little snafu. And I think that the doctor really thought that the cyst was a mature follicle, and he basically told me to inject for no reason. I mean, there was no follicle at all. And I was absolutely devastated. I felt violated that I had put hormones into my body at the wrong time when I didn't need them. I remember sitting in the car and just crying, and I was so mad, and I was like, we are seeing a different doctor. This is unacceptable. I just felt so out of control. And after a while, you know, we just talked, and we were like, we're going to give the doctor 1 more month. We loved our doctor. You know, it was an honest mistake. we just realized that being angry was really not going to help anything. It really wasn't. It was just stressing my body out even more. And I really realized that part of it was that I had to advocate for myself. If I had known what side my cyst was on, I knew what it looked like, I'd seen the ultrasound many times before, I really should have just spoken up and said, hey, are you sure that's not my cyst? You know, you really need to have the information for yourself as well. Nobody is going to do it for you. And that kind of is, it goes the same way for if you have any sort of irregular period or you're feeling like you have heavy bleeding or cramps. Call your doctor, bug your doctor, say something is wrong, I know something is wrong. Because they took me really, really seriously, and I know that a lot of the statistics say that any young, healthy couple, it'll still take you 6 months to a year to fall pregnant. You know, I don't think doctors are really looking at that as closely anymore. I think they're looking at it on a case-to-case basis because women are having so many issues and so many complications. And it would be horrible for you to try for a year when you have something like PCOS and, you know, you're just kind of, it's a moot point to try on your own. By the way, you can get pregnant on your own with PCOS. The hard part is you never know when you're going to get your period and you never know when you're going to ovulate. So, you know, having intercourse once a month or those few times a month, it's not going to work. The math doesn't really line up. It's hard to take ovulation tests. And so that's kind of why they say your chances are less likely. It's just much more difficult because you can't pinpoint when you're going to ovulate. So it doesn't really affect anything else unless, of course, you had other complications. And a good doctor would run a bunch of tests beforehand, test you, test your partner, to make sure that there aren't any outside complications, so that you can have kind of the best success that you can through the medications that they're giving you. So advocate for yourself. That's definitely really important. And the last thing we did was we went through a couple of cycles just kind of using the medication and trying on our own. And then we decided we wanted to do IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. A lot of people confuse this with IVF. It's actually really much less invasive, and you your partner gives a sperm sample and they wash it, and then you go in and they insert the sperm through a catheter through your cervix. It's not the most fun procedure, but it's a little crampy, but it's not like scary. It's, you know, it's not super painful. It's very quick, and it's really kind of awkward and funny because you're like, okay, you know, we're getting pregnant in the doctor's office, and you have to like sit there for 10 minutes and just let things kind of move around, and it's just really funny, but it works. So our first cycle with IUI was when we got pregnant. So it just takes out a lot of those kind of factors that can interfere with pregnancy. You know, it just gets the sperm right to where they need to be, right next to the egg. And we were super lucky. You know, I think that it's just such a great option if you are kind of getting a little bit impatient, and it's not as expensive as IUI. It's like a couple $100. It's not crazy. So again, you know, I can't say that having PCOS was like the craziest thing. I've had heard so many stories from other women who have had way more complicated issues. And I do remember thanking God that this was what I got, because if there was any complication or any syndrome, I'll take PCOS. You know, it seems, even though it was difficult, it was definitely something that, you know, we could deal with. And I remember I did not even look at the pregnancy test. I got up really early on a Saturday morning, took the test, and went back to bed. And my husband was like, aren't you going to check to see, you know, what it is? And I was like, you know, I can't look at another negative. It's just going to make me so sad. And so, do you mind checking it? And he was like, okay. So he went to the bathroom and he just waited, and I kind of fell back to sleep. Not really, but I was just like relaxing. And he came back and was just speechless and tugged at the covers and was like, just kept nodding. And I couldn't believe it. I kept saying, you're lying, you're lying. And I think we sat on the bathroom floor and cried. And it was just, this process and this experience makes you so much more grateful for this little miracle and for finally getting pregnant. So my last little tidbit of advice has to do with kind of what to say and how to deal with what other people say. A lot of people told me not to stress out, and I just feel like that's the worst advice. And I know that they meant well, but you're going to stress out and you're going to be emotional. And if you want to be sad one day, that's totally fine. Just try to manage and kind of have coping mechanisms, manage your stress. Some of the things Ben and I did to kind of have something to look forward to was we decided that anytime we got a negative pregnancy test, we were going to go out to dinner and have cocktails and just like really treat ourselves and just vent the whole time. And, I knew by then that I could drink alcohol because it was negative. And so we just that was like something to look forward to. And we also had very early morning appointments for our follicle scans. So we would go to breakfast afterwards at this little cafe nearby and just talk it out. Talk out what the doctor said, whether we felt like we were being heard, whether we appreciated their advice, were we comfortable with the next couple of steps, if something didn't work, what we were going to do then. And that was really important because we were able to communicate, get it out, and then move on with our day. And I think communication is really, really important when it comes to something like this that can be so disappointing, especially if it's early on in your marriage. I always felt like, well, this is my body and there's something wrong with my body. So I always felt so bad, and he was always there to reassure me and say, we're still in it together. Just because it's your body, it doesn't mean anything. So those are kind of tidbits. Take whatever other people say with a grain of salt. It may upset you, and they don't mean it, but they're trying to help, but they may just kind of put their foot in their mouth. And then if you are someone who is a friend of someone who is dealing with infertility, whether it's PCOS or something else, one of my favorite comments that a friend said to me was, "You're in my prayers. You're in my thoughts. You're in my prayers." There's something so powerful about that. I didn't have to do anything. She was the one who was just kind of putting good energy out there for me. And I am a science girl through and through. I obviously want to be a nurse. I believe in scientific evidence, but I definitely also believe in the power of positive thinking and of having that support and that good energy around you. And I think so many people were thinking about us. I really believe that that's part of the reason that we did get pregnant in the end. And I feel now that so many people are praying and just thinking about my baby and, my pregnancy, because it is such a miracle baby, and just having kind of all that positive energy just feels so great. And the other thing I loved was when people just said, "Oh, that sucks. Like, that is just awful. I'm so sorry." And it was just like, thanks, instead of trying to lift me up and tell me to not stress. And it was just so nice to hear them say, "That just sucks." And I was like, you know what? It really sucks and it's really hard. Thank you for letting me vent. So again, just being there for someone, sometimes you don't need to give advice unless they really are asking for it. You could just be there. And I have spoken to so many friends, and each friend who lives in a different city, in a different mom group, has always known someone with PCOS who now has 3 children or has these success stories. But it's really interesting to me that you may come upon someone who has, if it's not PCOS, it's something else in a mom group or, any sort of peer group. So it's always nice to know kind of what to say in that situation. So I think that's all I wanted to kind of go over. I know that was kind of a quick version of what PCOS is and infertility. Obviously that was my experience. And luckily, we had such an amazing outcome, and we're so thankful to the doctors and medicine and all of our friends and family for being so supportive and helpful. I hope that our story is kind of a way to provide hope for other couples who are going through the same thing and maybe haven't conceived yet. It can absolutely happen, and you just have to kind of get through it whatever way you know how to. But again, before I move on to any more vlogs about my pregnancy, I just really wanted to share this with you all so that you knew kind of how baby got here and why this is such a special pregnancy for me. I hope you enjoyed. Again, I would love to hear comments. If you have comments or questions, please email me at penny@pennyandthep.com. And please show these videos to your friends, especially this one, any friends that you think might be suffering from any sort of infertility issues. I'm hoping that this will help. And again, thank you so much for all of your comments, and we will have another video up soon. Have a great day. Bye.